We are young, we are powerful.
We are female,
We are Muslims.
We are Sisters Speak, destroying the stereotype of stigmatized Muslim women.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is the Sisters Speak podcast, and you're here with me, Amina.
Me, Lamisa.
And me, Mariam.
And
This is our podcast.
Welcome to the podcast. This is a relaxed space. Like, get yourself a cup of tea.
I love that.
You know, whatever you like to do. If this is the first time listening to a podcast, once I was like, I had this face mask and it covered the eyes, and I was like, what am I supposed to do with my eyes closed? So then I listened to a podcast. So, you know, do whatever you want. This is your time to relax. We have done a few other podcasts before, and some of them have been quite intense, some of them quite laid back. I'd say this one could be a mixture of both.
Oh, it depends. Did you have
it depends what I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, that's true.
So we were discussing what should we talk about, and I was like, let's just talk about life.
Sounds so ambiguous, right?
Yeah, that could take us anywhere. This could be a fun, relaxed conversation, or it could be really deep. But let's see.
We'll find out.
I'm just gonna delve right in. I wanted to ask you guys, what is something like a quote, or it doesn't have to be a specific quote or a saying, or something that you really live by, something that you think is important, and maybe you remind yourself of this every day. Something that you live by.
There's a few things that I live by, though. That's the thing. So every situation, I kind of resort to different kind of quotes. So it really depends what I'm going through.
Can you really live by something though? I feel like I've tried in the past to have, like, you know, I seen a quote and I'm like, wow, that's
like a mantra.
That's amazing. This is how I'm gonna live my life. But then afterwards, you know, I forget about it, or I just can't live like that. I don't know. I feel like I'm still finding my way in my own way instead of, you know, I guess a few basic things would be, you know, try and be as happy as possible.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a quote, because I feel like it's weird to have a quote tattooed in your brain and you're like, you know what, this is how I have to live my life every single day. Because like Mariam said, we do have different scenarios in our life where we like, so one certain quote won't always apply.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, I think that's a part of growth as well.
Yeah.
Knowing how to use maybe inspirational quotes or certain wisdom in different situations, and you know, one thing will lead to another. And for me personally, it really depends of what I'm experiencing. So, you know, if it's a difficult time, then I really use the Quran. I really use the Quran, and it's something that I try to really look out for, is that, you know, I'm not alone. I think that brings me a lot of comfort. And another thing is that everything that happens is in your qadr, and which means it's in your fate, in your destiny, for those who don't know. And I think, you know, so long as I try my best, I don't really need to think, I don't need to live in the future. I think that's kind of human nature, to either live in the past or to live in the future. It's quite hard. You have to kind of, I think it takes effort to kind of govern, for me personally, to govern yourself and think, okay, let's balance this. Let's try to live in the moment, but of course have, you know, I'm not saying to live in the moment and just not have anything planned ahead, but I'm saying that
Try to be present.
Try to be present and kind of look after things. I think it's quite, of course, in the times that we live, everything is so fast paced, and it's quite daunting what's going to happen in the future, because things change quite dramatically very quickly, especially in the times that we live. So I think that's one thing I try to live by, or I think take heed from.
I never thought of it that way though. Like, it's human nature to always live in the future or live in the past. Like, instead of just utilizing the present, we always either focus on our mistakes or think, oh no, I need to work for the future, this is what I need to do. But we don't realize the extent to which we do it by, I think.
Yeah, I think it's because we're created in such a temporary way. You know, we're our whole nature and our whole being is temporary. And I think that's what, you know, why we, you know, when you have faith, you're extending yourself and you're submitting yourself to something that's constant and eternal, whereas everything that inhabits the world is temporary, and there's no consistency to it. It's always evolving, it's always changing. And I think that's where we kind of, you know, once we kind of submit to the things that are emptying us or something that's not constant, it does affect us. And I think that's why, one thing that I probably have mentioned this on our radio show, is that when you submit to Allah, you're a slave of God, but then it frees you from being slave of everything else. And I think that's quite profound for me, because you can submit yourself to all these other things that might drain you, but then if you're submitting yourself to God and He's always there with guarantee, that firm belief, that conviction, you don't feel that uneasiness that you get when you're
submitting yourself to other things.
Yeah, submitting yourself to other things.
I love that. And I also a lot of the times you hear people saying, I love you for the sake of Allah, or I love this for the sake of Allah. And when you hear that for the first time, you don't fully understand. I know for myself, when I didn't understand what it meant, I just thought that's just something people say. Like, I didn't think anything bad of it. I just thought, that's just what you say. But now I understand the wisdom behind saying, even loving your own parents for the sake of Allah, you'd think, well, I love them because they're my mum and dad, they raised me and I love them for a reason. But also, I like what you said, that when you submit yourself to Allah, you don't, nothing can disappoint you, because Allah won't disappoint you. You're not giving your all to everything else, because I really it's just, as humans, that we do have our downfalls and we do hurt people sometimes, and our loved ones will hurt us sometimes. That's not to say that they that they should, or that it's justified. They do apologize and we do get on with it in the end. I mean, everyone that we love, we do have silly arguments sometimes. But I think when you have strong faith in Allah, then it's easier to deal with it, because I think when you are let down, then it's easy to give that person, it's easy to forgive them. I think when you are when you have stronger faith,
it's easy to move on, isn't it?
Yeah, because everything that you do is governed by the fact that if I forgive this person, then Allah's going to be happy with me. If I know that all of this is temporary, I won't allow that to overwhelm me. I think it's quite a difficult thing. It's easy for us to say, even I struggle with it.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
It's just reminding yourself, knowing that when you have faith in Allah, He just never abandons you. I think that's so comforting for me.
I think with that, it's another thing whereby it removes quite a lot of unnecessary stress that you might face, and that's something I guess I'm recently trying to live by. I'm recently trying to live by, because I realized that when you have quite a lot of things, even if you're not doing a lot of things, but loads of things on your mind, you just feel physically drained.
100%.
And you feel stressed out, but for no real reason, just because there's lots of things going on. And so I guess nowadays I'm just trying to calm myself down and sort of live in the sense of, nothing is that big of a deal where you can't really handle with it. It's not going to be the end of the world if, today I was stressing out because, I wasn't going to get here on time. But even small things like that, when they build up, it can amount to a lot of stress. So if you just live in sort of a more calm manner, not necessarily so zen, but
you're late to everything,
it's just everything's fine. No, I mean, in a way where you don't have to stress about little things. It's take everything as it comes and just
I think
enjoy
that
it, I guess.
Really links to priorities. What your priority, ultimately your priority is to submit to God and gain His pleasure. And when you gain His pleasure, and when you're submitting yourself to Him, you're not necessarily seeking the pleasure of people. Of course, you have to fulfill the rights of people, because that's ultimately gaining the pleasure of Allah. So again, it really relates to what Lamaisa is saying, that it's just learning what makes you stronger to God, because the way you have your relationship with God will be different to another person. I think it's just learning about yourself and having that self-awareness. And also finding out, what aspects. So, for example, if you struggle with a specific thing, I don't know, I get overwhelmed and I have anxiety. There's parts of the Quran that really helps me, and that's really powerful for me. And there might be some people might struggle with anger, so there might be ayahs in the Quran that help you with anger. So I think it's just that's what faith is. It's very individualized, and I think one thing I personally really love about our religion is that it's very personalized. That every single person has a different journey, but we're all, walking towards one destination and one goal. And, it's a very philanthropic religion as well. So, you're trying to learn about yourself and how to be kind to people, how to be kind to yourself. And I think that's something we forget as well, to be kind to ourselves.
Very true.
Yeah. I forgot what else I was going to ask you guys.
It's completely fine.
I feel like, we've delved into like quite a particular route in terms of what life is about, how to live life, I guess.
But all of this never occurred to me until after my A levels. I think certain experiences, and even with age, more than age, I think it's experiences really.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
Experiences kind of navigate the way you think and the way you experience something as well. So if you start to change your framework of thinking, it really, the way you react to something is completely different.
100%. I agree.
And I think there's a quote saying that you can't change your circumstances, but you can change your reaction, and that has a more influence than anything. And I think that's really powerful because if there's if there's something happening and there's factors that you can't control, the only thing that you can control is the way you receive it. So that's
like a big driver of how your life pans out, because I think the things that we remember the most are how we felt in that moment. I think sometimes we have parts of our life where you'd think to some people, that was like literally nothing, but because we had such strong emotions in that moment, like for example, you could have just gone to a friend's house and just like sat on their bed all day, but it was probably like in your head, it's one of those moments in your life where you thought that was such a good day because of how you felt. Or it could be like the complete opposite. It could be something like a really big event, and anyone would think, oh, you must have had so much fun, or this and that, but it
could have been just
inside
average,
you could have felt completely different. And
it's
I think
more grounded in emotion.
It's all about how you reacted in that moment. I think having it actually takes hard work to react positively to certain things. I think you mentioned before, like having I forgot what I was going to say.
Self-awareness, I think.
Yeah, like having self-awareness and having faith. It takes hard work to actually... Oh yeah, you said to live in the present. Like it's easy for us to live in to worry about the future or to just keep thinking about the past. It actually takes a lot of hard work to ground yourself and to stay on that middle ground. It's really easy to like walk off on the side somewhere, but it takes a lot of strength to walk in the middle. But when you work hard for that, you actually feel a lot better. I also wanted to ask, I think Lamisa wanted to talk about childhood. So I wanted to ask you guys, what is something, maybe something profound or just something small that happened in your childhood that really shaped you today? Like maybe it shaped your character, or maybe it shaped what the person that you want to be.
I think when I was younger, I spent a lot of time with my family. As in a lot of families to come visit me. I used to visit a lot of my family who live in London, my dad's sisters, my mum's sisters. I think that really has shaped the person and the values I have today. So I'm really family oriented, and I really love spending time with my cousins, my aunties, my uncles. I like checking up on them and that sort of thing. And I feel like we're kind of losing that because, again, as we just mentioned, it's very fast paced. Everything's so fast paced. Everyone has no time for themselves, let alone for anyone else. And I think that's something that I really value now as I'm older, because time felt they felt like time had such barakah in it. I felt like the summer holidays felt like forever when I was younger.
That's true. Summer holidays, as I was growing older, like in year 10, year 11, those summer holidays were really short, but the summer holidays in junior school used to last ages. It used to be like,
I think it's we didn't really have we didn't really have responsibilities. It was just waking up
And it wasn't
playing.
like thinking a lot. The day
Yeah.
did seem long because, you know, you're a kid.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think that's something that I kind of want to continue as I grow older, to spend time with my family and continue the values that my parents have instilled in me. I think it's really important, especially once I finish uni, when I have my summer break and I spend time with my dad's sisters or my mom's sisters, and I remember, oh my God, I've got so many family here. I have like 3 generations of cousins in this country, and when I'm in uni, all I can think about is the book and submissions and deadlines and reading. It's just so nice knowing you have like loving people surrounding you and that love to give to them as well.
I think with me, when I was younger, we used to go to Bangladesh a lot. Like, we still do, but back when I was younger, obviously, you know, there wasn't too much emphasis on studies and school and stuff like that. So we would go quite a few times in the year. And when I used to go over there, I think from a young age, I was introduced to the idea that, you know, not everyone around the world is as fortunate as we are. And yeah, when we used to go over there, like, obviously in those sort of in less developed countries, people are going to be begging for food and things like that. So when I first like saw beggars and stuff like that, when I was able to understand what was going on, I think that, like, I can still imagine every single situation. We were sort of inside a car and we were waiting, and a woman was like sticking her hand through the window, like trying to like beg for money. And I just remember like crying my eyes out and being like, why don't we give her money? And my parents, on the other hand, you know, they'd seen this a lot. So at the time they were just like, you know, they were telling her, like, I think they gave her a little bit, but she still wasn't going away. So they were kind of telling her, you know, we're going to have to leave now, all of that type of stuff. But as a child, I was just like, why is she in this situation? Like, you know, and it was that type of thing. I think from that moment on growing up, I knew that as a person, whatever I do, I want it to help people in the world. And I think that really shaped the type of person that I am today.
Yeah, I think I experienced something quite similar when I went to Bangladesh as well, seeing the, you know, the disparity between poor people and rich people, because, you know, we tend to live in such a privileged way, especially if you live in Bangladesh or from Pakistan or any other country, and then you see that people who barely have bread, even like maybe in a week, you know. So one thing that I did when I was in Bangladesh is I went to a school, and I wanted to kind of break out my comfort zone, because public speaking wasn't really my forte, and I still struggle with it as well, in front of an audience per se. And so I went to the school my dad went to when he was younger, so that was quite interesting. And I met his teachers who were still there, which is even more interesting.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's quite crazy.
That's pretty cool.
And then they started testing me on like British history, and I'm like, I don't even know who the Queen is. Like, what? Who was the Queen like 100 years ago? How do you know this? But anyways, I divert. Yeah, so I did a speech on women's rights, and like I was really, really nervous, and I can't speak Bangla at all. It was shamelessly, I can't speak it, but I couldn't speak it, but I really wanted to do some impact. I wanted to have this dialogue and have this conversation and talk to these young people. So, you know, I wanted to, because for me it was like being ambitious as a woman. I have so much privileges, I have so many resources, and I wanted to go to Bangladesh and talk about these things. So I wrote a speech, and I remember I was telling my uncle, could you like translate for me? Like, how do I used Google Translate to write sentences because I didn't know how to say it. So I asked one of the teachers, and he kind of assisted me when I was delivering a speech. And one of the questions I asked was, why do women in Bangladesh and they don't pursue certain careers, or why do you think there's not that much of a work culture? I wanted to test. I wanted to see how they would react to it. And I remember this boy. I think he was like in year 8 or something, and he said to me that he responded. He said that young people in Bangladesh, as soon as they come to a certain age, all their parents kind of talk about or emphasize is marriage, and so they don't have the aspirations as, you know, normal people might have, because the whole culture, you know, assists marriage. So he was saying that, but that shouldn't be the way, because our prime minister, she's a female person, so therefore, you know, you should try to be ambitious as possible. And then I was really impressed by that, and I was like, how articulate the way I didn't give justice to the way he said it, but he said it in such a articulate way. And considering they were in year 8 and year 9, I think that was such an amazing answer, and that sort of conversation started. And I remember the teacher, he was saying it in Bangla. He was saying that, in their country, so he was referring to UK. He was saying in their country, when there's a problem, they create dialogue. But in our country, when we face anything, we don't really speak out as much as we should.
But I think there's a reason for that.
Of course, there's a reason for that. And
I think it's more so because it's not necessarily that they don't want to, perhaps,
yeah,
but more so that they can't.
And I think that's the example I shared is a clear way to show that, they have these ideas, but no one is really giving them that platform. And even I think every culture is different, but one thing that kind of astounded me is when I went to the classroom, and I know it's a mark of respect, but they all stood up, and I'm just like you. I'm a student, and they don't sit down until the teachers tell them to sit down. And I found that I felt uncomfortable with it, because I felt like they're in a classroom and they're learning knowledge, and it's like the teacher had the power to make them stand up the whole lesson if he wanted to. And I was, and in my head, I was like, I literally said to them, please don't do this. Every time I would walk into a classroom, they all would stand up. I was like, please don't do this. I feel really uncomfortable. But it made me think that, when you create too much of a division between a teacher and a student, I feel that you can't have that, a free conversation as you would do if there wasn't that barrier. I'm not saying, there's other ways to kind of create that respect and those boundaries. But I felt that because, it was explicitly, I'm the teacher and you're the student, so stay in your position as a student. It's like they just were talked out.
It's a bit restrictive.
It's a bit restrictive. It's just they talked out. They wasn't invited to discuss.
Yeah, I feel like, obviously culture-wise, it's different. You're talking about sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my phone.
That's completely fine. I'm not saying that, some cultures, it might work for them, I'm not saying that it's just something that was a bit of a culture shock for me.
Shock to you, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're saying about women need to have, why aren't they having their aspirations? I feel like times have actually changed quite a bit,
Yeah,
especially in
of course.
Bangladesh.
100%.
I feel like, it depends on the type of family that you come from and the type of mindset and the values that they have. Because I know my aunt, she's in Bangladesh. She's probably 50 now, I think, and she's a lawyer.
Oh,
So
wow,
from back in
mashallah.
that time,
Yeah.
they had instilled in them, you need education, and we're not going to marry you off until education. Of course, marriage is a whole part of life. I think, inshallah, at some point we will get married in our lives. But I think also, having the balance in the sense that I'm also going to be my own person, and I'm also going to try my best at whatever I do and try and make a difference in the world. Because at the end of the day, in Islam, we are all individuals. We're not linked with someone else. Whatever I do is it's going in my book. It's not going in your book or anyone else's. So,
It's a beautiful way to say it.
I need to make sure that everything I do is good and enough.
And also,
in
I
that
think
sense.
that another factor, there's lots of factors to play. It's not something that we can just delve in the surface. Of course, if you have resources and you have the finance to do certain aspirations, of course you do. So some people don't even have the resources
exactly.
to educate themselves.
And it's unfair because they didn't choose to be in that position. And that's what I find the most annoying about this whole thing. Being where you're born is basically like a lottery.
Yeah.
Because we could have and the fact is we are so close to being born in another country. The fact that we were born here or
It's
America
luck.
or somewhere else, it's proper luck. And we're able to do things like this, whereas if we were born somewhere else in the country, maybe we wouldn't have the opportunity, that type of thing.
Yeah,
And it's crazy.
What you mentioned before about how the boy in that school was saying that they're just encouraged to get married. I feel like the reason that is because maybe it's not because they don't value education. Maybe it's all they know. I feel like sometimes when you don't have, like you mentioned, those resources, it's how if you don't know, if you're not familiar with anything else, then marriage might seem like the best thing for you to do because that's all you know.
I feel like it's a way of perhaps changing a certain circumstance. I think when we're in those situations, alhamdulillah, we're so lucky that we have the life that we're living. and that we're not in a situation where, because you're right, for some people, marriage is a viable option. Maybe, you know, they've had to start working young, especially in those countries. Loads of women work in factories, in the garments industry, those types of things. So, you know, and you haven't had much of an education because you have to graft for your family, that type of thing. So, you know, marriage might seem like, you know, I should do it in order to get myself in a better situation, that type of thing. So it makes sense, I guess, but in the same way, yeah, it's crazy. I feel like life, and that is like the lottery of life. It's crazy where the people that you're born with, the parents that you're given, you know, everything in so many ways, everything could have gone wrong.
Yeah.
But amazingly, everything's pretty much okay. And it's like, you know, of course, everyone has their own problems and their own issues and that type of thing. But every single circumstance, you know, you could be so massively disadvantaged, but we're not.
I think that really kind of resonates with me, because I think even all of us actually in this room, that we feel that responsibility to create positive impact. You know, we were privileged with resources and education and etc. etc.
Even like having this show,
given a voice, allowed us to give us a voice. I think it's really important that we kind of give back. We kind of give back to our communities, because, you know, that's why I can mention on the podcast actually. That's why I started with my friends an organization that will help empower students to access resources, because that's where it stemmed from. I saw, you know, I was privileged enough to be able to be educated and to do the things I'm doing, but why not? Just because, you know, the people in Bangladesh or Pakistan are not. They don't have the same access. Why can't they benefit from the knowledge I gained? I can spread that. I have that capacity. So why not use the resources we have and share that? I think you know, we're capable of doing it. It's just taking the initiative to do it.
I think that's
I think that's the main driving factor about what I want to do with my life. You know, I know we talked about childhood.
I was kind of gonna come on to that, but I didn't know if it was too like
abrupt,
too deep even, but I guess I did.
I love how we started off like, this is gonna be chill, get your cup of tea,
but you can still have your cup of tea. But yeah, I guess.
What about you, Amina? What do you want to do with your life?
Damn, I was
been asking us,
you guys,
but let's hear it from you.
I don't know. I guess it's quite like the conversation took a really big turn, but I don't know. For my since I was a child, I never had like the typical I want to be like
a princess.
I don't know. I didn't.
Yeah, like a goal,
I didn't have like a job in my head, and I don't know where I read it. You know, when you're on social media, you read all kinds of things and you don't know what it is. But someone said something about like, why does your dream have to be a job? And I really obviously, if your dream is a certain job, then that's great. But I really resonated with that, because I don't see like my goals to be a certain career. I just see it as like being successful in terms of having like a positive impact on another person's life, not just like the whole world, because that's too much to put on myself.
Realism.
Oh my gosh.
but literally just like my own sisters, like to be like kind of raw. That's like my biggest priority, is to make sure that at least that my sisters are okay. I think that's for me right now, that's like my number one thing. And I liked what you mentioned before about family, and I think it's such a I really resonated with what you said, because growing up for me, like the summer holidays were always going to my grandma's house, seeing my family, like my cousins every Saturday, and like in the summer holidays it would be sometimes the whole entire week. I'd see them every day. And now we're like older, we're like, some of us we've got jobs, we've got uni, and we just don't see each other enough. And when we do, it's just so nice, and I really value that time. And every time we have like, we barely do anything special. We just have like a movie night. We buy loads of snacks. You know how it goes. And I don't know, that's just, whenever I have moments like that, I think this is what my life is about. Like, this is what I want it to be. It doesn't matter how my life goes in terms of, you know, education and career. Of course, that's really important. I'm not putting like a line through that, but I'm saying that's like a separate part of my life. But essentially, I feel like what's important to me is to just be a kind person. And I think also when you mentioned how the teachers, like, they make sure the kids stand up, and I guess for some people that's just a form of respect, but at the same time having that barrier broken between, like, you know, a child and a parent, or an uncle and a niece, or you know, a sister, like a big sister and her little sister. I just want to make sure that anyone who I have in my life that I love knows that they can talk to me, and that they can, I don't know, I just don't like to see people suffer.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I just
get you.
want to, if I find out that someone I know or someone that I'm close with, we don't even have to be that close, if I find out that they have been like suffering in any kind of way, then I feel like it's my responsibility as, like, just as a Muslim to be to help them in that kind of way.
For sure.
And I also I think during Ramadan, the one that just happened, that was a weird sentence.
2019 Ramadan.
Yeah, the Ramadan that just passed happened. I think I mentioned in one of the shows, actually, I was listening to the Seerah, and I really kind of formed a new kind of relationship with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like in terms of actually understanding who he was and how much he loved us. And when I was listening to it, I'd really recommend anyone to just, I don't know, just type it in somewhere or just buy a book about it. But for me, listening to it was easier at the time. I'd really recommend you just take your time with it, but really look into the Seerah, because it's such a big part of our religion to love the Prophet. And we're always told as kids, and I think maybe it's just a part of growing up, but as a child, you know, you should love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but you don't fully understand why you love him, or you know why, but there's just not the connection. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, you should love him.
You know,
but
and
is it sort of really?
Yeah, but is the love actually there in your heart? And that's that's not like a criticism of anyone who feels like that, because I did
children
too.
As well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something we have to do. I think it's our duty to find out more about him, so that we can have love for
Islam. Because it makes sense. How are you going to love someone that you don't know anything about?
Exactly. And one thing that I learned, or like kind of relearned in my own head, is the love that the Prophet had for us. And I just thought that was incredible. I don't really want to talk about any of the stories because I don't remember them properly. I don't want to give like any wrong information, but just in general, there's like so many circumstances, like so many parts in the Prophet's life where he just like showed his love for the ummah. And I don't know, it just really melts my heart every time I listen to it, every time I heard a new story. And I don't know, it just puts the religion in such a different light for me. And I just think it's, if the Prophet loved us that much, what's stopping us from like loving the people around us? And I also read about this story where I know I wasn't going to mention any stories, but I guess I can mention this briefly. But where a child had a pet bird that died, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was walking past the child and was like, why is this child crying? And he found out that the pet bird died, and he like did a little funeral for the bird. And I just thought that was just I don't know, it just really hit me. I don't know how, I can't really put it into words. I just thought it was a really nice thing to hear and to read, because he just catered to literally every single person that he met, and everyone. One thing I learned when I was listening to it is the sheikh who was talking about the Seerah was saying that every person who met the Prophet felt like he loved them the most. I think that's such an amazing way to treat people. And also the thing about the bird is just, I think it kind of shows us that we shouldn't belittle someone else's problems. I mean, we always hear about stories about, people's pet goldfish being flushed down the toilet. But as a child, that kind of thing is shocking. I like, as an adult, you'd think, oh, it's just a little bird, or it's just a tiny fish that has a lifespan of 3 days. But
to a child, that's there.
Yeah, I think it shows that we should have empathy and we should treat everyone how we would like to be treated if we had the same feelings as them. And I think that's kind of like...
It's a way to live by.
Yeah, I think that's my goal in life.
I think one thing all of us have kind of touched upon is how we just want to make a positive impact in one way or another. And it doesn't even need to be how you were saying the whole world is just starting at home and starting the people that surround us.
I think trying to leave the world a better place than when you found it, like when you were born into it. I think that's
a beautiful
one
way to
thing
say
that
it.
I sort of think about most of the time.
I like that because I've heard I've heard a few people say things like, why would you want to have kids when we live in a world like this? But if you think about it, the world has never been a great place to live. If you want to think in that negative way, I mean, well, let's be realistic. It's never going to be perfect. We're never, like, if you look into the past, it was never great anyway.
I think that's because we're all humans, right?
Yeah, so if, like, I'm not going to judge anyone's decisions, but the way I see it is that we can make a difference in the world by just making a difference to one person's life.
100%. Sure. I think there's a quote, not everybody can... No, wait, let me think about this. Everybody can do something. No, it's gone.
It's okay. But yeah.
Let me just think about it. I have to say it now. I think it's something on the line saying that you can't do. Sorry, one person can't do everything, but everybody can do something. That's it.
Yeah. That's a nice,
I think that's
wrap up.
a good way to end it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Any last words?
No, I think that was.
We had quite deep conversation and
Thank you for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you for listening to
Give us a
our
rating.
podcast. Yeah, give us. I don't know how it's going to work,
5
but
stars.
you can find this podcast on iTunes and Spotify.
And you can contact us on the at Sister Speak on Instagram, and just let us know if you have any comments you have, or if you have any topics that you'd like us to discuss. We'd love to hear from you.
And we also do a radio show Tuesdays.
Yeah,
6
and
p.m.
also, but just if you want to hear us live, if you want to watch us, every Tuesday at 6 p.m.
on Inspire 105.1 FM.
It sounds like we're on air right
oh
now.
my god! But yeah,
I hope you all enjoyed that, and follow us on Instagram, like Mariam said, at Sisters Speak. Let us know what you think, and thank you so much for watching. Hope you have an amazing day, night, or afternoon. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We stream our daily broadcast on inspirefm.org. You'll find all our daily updates on our social media at Inspire FM Luton.